Good evening. So nice to be with you guys again. I want to tell you a story, which is actually totally unrelated to the message, but it involves one of your elders, and so I thought it would be fun to tell it, and hopefully it'll encourage you like it's encouraged me. One of my loves, and it might be a weakness, I'm not sure, but is furniture, especially furniture that is old, that's rickety, that doesn't look so pretty. And my wife and I just have this absolute passion to take an old piece of furniture and throw a little bit of magic, particularly my wife. She's just so creative in that area, and make it look good afterwards. And a couple of days ago, I saw this item at the auction here. It was a table and a couple of chairs, and it was one of those, it needed a lot of attention. The tabletop was really it was bad. The chairs were rickety. And I actually popped down on Thursday to come and have a look at it, and I thought, I'm coming to the auction on Saturday. And when I looked closely, I thought, no, that piece of wood is actually oak. It's a beautiful piece. But unless you put a sanding machine on there, you won't know that. Anyway, Saturday comes, or Friday night comes, and I realize I can't get to the auction for various reasons. It's not going to happen. And when I say a little bit of a weakness, I was really sad, and I know it sounds strange to get sad over a piece of furniture, but that's how much we love just on the sideline when we've got time, which is not a whole bunch, but we just love doing things like that. And I realized I'm not gonna get my hands on this table. And I mean, it was big enough in my heart, honestly, to talk to the Lord about it. I know that's crazy, but anyway, Saturday morning arrives. And I don't know, it must have been about 9:30, Jesse Hardy sends me a message. Now, we're friends, but I mean, we don't contact each other often at all. And I thought, Jesse, nice message from Jesse. And I look closer, and there's this very picture of the same table and the chairs. And he sends this message saying, I'm at the auction. I know you guys enjoy doing this. Just want to say, how's it? And I'm thinking, this is too good to be true. Like, Lord, I can't get there. But are you using a friend to do this on my behalf? And I mean, I'm sure we all know this as Christians, as God partners with us constantly. I think several times a day sometimes, God is talking. And sometimes He talks through spiritual means. Often He talks through the Word of God. But sometimes He talks through natural means. And I'm thinking, that's God. Like out the blue. Jesse could have sent any picture on the planet, and he sends a picture of a rickety table. And I look at this thing, and I sent a message back. Hey, in fact, I phoned him. Jesse, do you think you could bid on it for me? So he says, yeah, sure. In my mind, we've got this thing in the bag. And the auctioneer gets to the item, and eventually he's there, and Jesse phones me. He says, okay, let's do this thing together. And I had an amount in my mind that I was willing to go up to. You know, with auctions, you got to do that. Otherwise, you spend all your money there in a bad way. And so the auctioneer starts at X amount, and he starts going up, and I'm realizing this thing's going up very quickly. It was an outside item. And when something at this auction is outside, you normally get it really reasonably. And he gets close to the figure. And then he gets to the figure. And Jesse said, what should I do? I said, keep going. Keep going. Stop. And horror of horrors, I lost it. I mean, the story should end like God came through. Out of anything that could happen, this photograph comes. And God kind of comes through the sideline and wants to just spoil his boy and his girl. And it didn't happen. And I have to tell you, I really know how strange this might sound, being so excited about a piece of furniture. But put your love in there and picture yourself not getting what you thought God was giving you. And it took me about an hour or so to just pull myself together. I'm serious. It's like, God, why would you do that? Like, out of anything that could happen, you sent that picture to me, and it seemed like a done deal. And about an hour later, I felt the Father say to me, I see you, boy, and I know how much that meant to you, but I also want to teach you lessons. I want to teach you the lesson of perseverance in the midst of disappointment. And sometimes God's goodness is shown not only through what He gives you, but for what you think He's going to give you and you don't get it. And I've realized for my own life, if I don't know how to navigate disappointment in my life, I actually start to wobble. It doesn't change the goodness of God. He is good all the time. But sometimes His goodness is discovered as a treasure in the midst of disappointment. It's like Jesus in the manger. Who would think that the treasure of the world, would be caught up in this little manger in the form of a baby? And sometimes we miss the treasure because we don't know how to handle the treasure. And so, for what that's worth, Jesse, wherever you are, thank you so much for trying. We'll try next time. So that was free, for what that's worth. Can you turn with me in your Bibles to Nehemiah, please? And I'll introduce the preach, or the title, in a minute. Oh, it's probably there already. Oh, there, it's there already. The guys beat me to it. Nehemiah chapter 4, and starting from verse 1. The Lord asked me a question a few weeks ago that rattled my life in some ways, and I'm still trying to actually understand the full extent of the question. But it came while I was reading in one of my devotions this beautiful book of Nehemiah. The context here is Nehemiah gets this instruction or this encouragement from God to go back to his hometown, his home city, to Jerusalem, and to build the wall that had been broken down. We know the story. If you've been a Christian for a little while, you probably would have heard it. And he goes back, and he's devastated by what he sees, this wall broken down. He's absolutely shattered by it, and God gives him a strategy, a plan. And he cruises through the city at night. He doesn't want anyone to see him. And God downloads the strategy of how to rebuild the wall. And he motivates the people around him miraculously, and they get to this level. Let's read it. Verse 1, when Sanballat heard that we were rebuilding the wall, he became angry and was greatly incensed. Sanballat is one of Nehemiah's greatest enemies, and another guy called Tobiah is also a great enemy of his. And this intimidation comes from these guys. He ridiculed the Jews, and in the presence of his associates and the army of Samaria, he said, "What are those feeble Jews doing? Will they restore their wall? Will they offer sacrifices? Will they finish in a day? Can they bring the stones back to life from those heaps of rubble, burned as they are?" Listen to this intimidation in verse 3 from Tobiah. Tobiah the Ammonite, who was at his side, said, "What they are building? Even a fox climbing up on it would break down their wall of stones." Doesn't that sound familiar? When you sometimes hear God saying something and everything is thrown against that. The intimidation of Satan. Verse 4, "Hear us, O God." This is Nehemiah. He turns to God in prayer, which is the right thing to do when intimidation comes. "Hear us, O God, for we are despised. Turn their insults back on their own heads. Give them over as plunder in a land of captivity. Do not cover up their guilt or blot out their sins from your sight, for they have thrown insults in the face of builders." And this is the key verse for me. God asked me a question off the back of verse 6. "So we rebuilt the wall till all of it reached half its height, for the people worked with all their heart." When I read verse 6, something jumped. These guys started with nothing, with rubble, with stones that were burnt, and they diligently picked up, and it was next, it speaks of team, doesn't it? This one's over there, and next to them was this one, and next to them was this one, and these are perfume makers, and these are goldsmiths, and these are whatevers, and the whole community gets together, and they get to halfway. And as I read that, I felt the Lord ask me this question, "Guy, will you protect your city?" And I didn't know how to answer it, and I'm still not sure if I do know how to answer it, but God got my attention. Will you protect your city as Nehemiah was doing against the enemy? Will you rally people around? Will you cause them or encourage them to be passionate about Jesus? Will you give them hope? Will you inspire them like God inspires to follow hard after God? Will you protect your city from the the onslaught of the devil, from these great schemes that the devil has, because he has schemes for every city, doesn't he? And I know White River is not a city, but it was a principle that God was talking about. Will you protect those that you influence who do not know me? And I just said, yes, Lord. I mean, I had no idea what that meant. And like I said, I'm still not fully sure of the context. But I'm starting to get a little bit of understanding. If God asks you a question, you kind of figure out how to answer it. And it was a yes, Lord question. I will, Lord. Just show me how. What's interesting, before we get a little practical, verse 7, when Sanballat and Tobiah, the Arabs and the Ammonites and the people of Ashdod heard that the repairs to Jerusalem's wall had gone ahead and that the gaps were being closed, they were very angry. And what I've discovered, when we say yes to God and we follow His call and we do things that perhaps are not, first choice, and that takes courage and takes commitment and sometimes takes all of you. When you say yes, very often the result of that is the enemy gets really angry, as what happened here. But it didn't throw Nehemiah. In verse 16, in response to the opposition, it says this, from that day on, half of my men did the work, while the other half were equipped with spears and shields and bows and armor. The officers posted themselves behind all the people of Judah who were building the wall. Verse 23, neither I nor my brothers nor my men nor the guards with me took off our clothes. I mean, it must have had an interesting aroma in the air. These guys were serious. They didn't even change their clothing. They were committed to the task. They were halfway up. Now they had to go the whole way. And they were absolutely committed. Each had his weapon, even when he went for water. Nehemiah is such an inspiring book. When God asks us to do something, and we all have the commission of God, and the commission is to go into the world and tell people what He's like and show them what He's like. And when He asks us to do that, the seriousness of the question, the seriousness of the task needs to grip us. And Nehemiah just so passionately believed that what God had said he must do, that instead of backing down from opposition, he just changed his strategy. It's kind of like, okay, guys, we got a problem. Everyone seems to be against us. So what we got to do is we got to get reinforcements. So you guys carry on working. You can't stop. You're doing such a good job. But I'm going to get some other guys to stand behind you with their weapons so that you don't get taken out. And he also says later on, he says, take a trowel in your one hand and keep a weapon in your other. In other words, don't be unaware of the devil's schemes, but keep building. And in a short period of time, he did what no other person could do. He got this wall up. And the people in the city were protected. And the people outside the city were not. And I want to talk a little bit about how to protect our city. For you, your city, if you live in Nelspruit, would be here. If you're from a little dorpie somewhere else and you're visiting, that would be your city. Just put your own, fill in the blanks for yourself. How to complete the work that God has called us to do. How to get the walls up. How to protect the city. Number one is to own it. To own our city. I remember when we used to live in Pietermaritzburg. Some of you might know, but when you come from Joburg and then Howick and Hilton, and you come into Maritzburg down the steep hill, and you overlook Pietermaritzburg as you come. And I remember every time I would go down that hill, I would often say either aloud, whoever was next to me in the car, or under my breath, I love this city. I just loved it. We would sometimes go with Ray Oliver up to World's View, to the highest hill in Maritzburg that we had access to. And we would just stand there and pray over our city. And I fell in love with our city. And I've discovered every place that my family has moved to, God's given me a love for the city. And I'm sure it's the same with you, is that where God's planted you, there's a yes in your heart. This is where He's got you. He doesn't want you anywhere else. It's here. And we say, yes, Lord. And it's this thing of owning our city. If He's put us here, then we own it. And we own the responsibility to change what needs to be changed and to get this gospel of Jesus Christ out there to those who don't know Him. Number two, to carry the fragrance of Jesus in our city. And I know that sounds quite Christianese, but it's so true. In answering this question, will you protect your city? The greatest way we can protect our city is to let the city know who Jesus is. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, if the city knew who Jesus was, what He was really like, many of them would come to know Him. And so to carry the fragrance of Jesus in our city is just to be conscious of Him all the time. Sometimes I think when scholars go to school or business people go to work, it's almost like when they close that front door, they leave the Lord at home. And then they come back at whatever time, and then it's, reconnecting with Him again. But when we go to work, when we go to play, when we do anything, we take Him with. And it's like putting deodorant on or putting perfume on. This fragrance of Christ, I think, is like that. When someone with a really strong perfume walks into a room, it's like, whoa, you either like it or not. But the fact is, it stands out. And I think one of the ways we protect our city is by carrying this fragrance of Christ. We're aware of His presence all the time. We take Him wherever we go. And His fragrance, the personhood of Christ through the Holy Spirit, we're just gently asking Him wherever we go to do what He wants to do. It's co-laboring with Him. It's missioning with Him. Number 3 is to pray for our city. I love what Sean was saying. You guys prayed for revival. You know what happens when revival comes to any community? The unsaved flock in. That's one of the signs of revival is non-believers somehow hear about it and they come. And I think we can be in prayer over our city a whole lot more than we perhaps realize. I don't think we only pray for our city at prayer meetings or in our devotions. I think prayer, I'm discovering more and more that prayer is something that actually happens a whole lot in a day. Paul says, pray without ceasing. How do you speak to your spouse or speak to your parents or speak to a friend and pray at the same time? It's impossible. And I don't think he means that. I think he means be conscious of God all the time, and throughout the day, just remember to just pop up these prayers whenever you can, whenever you remember. Pray about everything. Isn't that what it's like to be in relationship with someone? When I'm with my wife, I love being with her. She's my favorite friend on the planet. I love my wife's presence. And there are times that we're quiet, but most times when we're together, we've got something to say, and conversation just doesn't seem to run out. And when we can't talk to each other, we might be in the same room together, but there's still communication. Sometimes it's just with the eyes, Sometimes we might be in a room together, and it's funny, when in the ministry, you're always with people, and sometimes, most times when Cheryl and I are together in crowds or in a meeting context, she kind of goes there and I go here, and because we're there for the people. And every now and then I'll do this. Like she's standing over there, like, just, and she knows exactly what that means. It's like he's noticed me. I try to do it without people noticing. Sometimes you get bust, but that's okay. It's good for people to see that. Just for you, Rudolph. You're mooi ding. That's for my wife, don't worry. But there's a sense of prayer. You're conscious of His presence all the time. And I mean, why can't you ask Him what car to buy? I'm not saying ask Him what brand of pasta to buy. I'm not saying be silly about things like that, perhaps. But what I'm realizing in my own life is I can actually talk to Him a whole lot more than I thought I could. I'm involving Him a whole lot more in a whole lot of things that I never knew I could. Sometimes we just forget to pray. I find if I'm not praying as much as I should, often it's just because I forget. If I'm busy, I forget that I, in an average day, can pray a lot, not only in my devotions. And praying for your cities like that, you just, every now and then you're walking down a street and you see a shop and it's just, God, bless that shop, man. Bless that owner. If they don't know you, I pray your kingdom would come there. You get these senses, or compassion is drawn to a particular thing or person or event, and it's just, God, just bless them. Praying a blessing is very powerful. Number 4, we're getting really practical here of how to protect your city, is to help meet practical needs in the city. Like, I think Christians should be everywhere. Just available at any opportunity. Why? For the sake of people, particularly for the sake of unbelievers. Do anything, like Paul says. Become all things to all men so as to win some to Christ. And so practical needs, like if you're in education, to realize that you're not just teaching kids for their future, but you're actually imparting something else, the kingdom of God, without them even realizing it. And you don't even have to preach to them necessarily, because I know that's probably illegal in most contexts. But you get up in the morning and you prepare yourself for the day, and it's like, I'm not just imparting knowledge, I'm imparting Christ. What about godly business ethics? This is a way of protecting a city. What about creating employment opportunities or health care? You're not just nursing. My wife's a nurse or an ex-nurse. And she speaks with such fondness about her early days of nursing. And the number of miracles she saw next to patients' beds was phenomenal. Both medical and spiritual. And isn't it possible, if you're in the healthcare sector, to just anticipate the miraculous wherever you go? What about addressing issues of poverty or joining committees across the city? I mean, not a whole bunch of people have grace for this. Council meetings here or whatever, but get onto these boards. Some people are just made for that. Some Christians like that stuff. I'm saying get in there and let the light of Christ shine. What about giving people dignity when the world doesn't? Or showing unconditional love that draws people to Jesus in you? Or providing support groups to the city like abuse recovery and divorce recovery and grief recovery. And you guys do that so well in this church. You're always providing these courses and opportunities for that. What about even in the entertainment sector? Is that right? It's the entertainment sector? Those of you that are in entertainment, to see that as an opportunity to leak Christ. I mean, one of the qualifications of an elder is to be hospitable. It's allowing yourself to let people into your world. We drove past a restaurant a little while ago in White River, and I've noticed over the last few months this restaurant's got really busy. And often there are so many cars there, and they have these jumping castles and all sorts of things, and families seem to just really be going there often. And as I drove past the one day, I just thought, God bless that restaurant. I don't even know if they're Christians who own them or not. I have no idea. But they're pulling families in. And when families are together, what's happening? They're connecting. Isn't that a form of protecting the city? Just blessing what's there already, but asking God's fragrance to come upon there. Is this making sense? What about, in the context of church, making your Sunday meetings as welcoming as possible, without compromise, obviously. We never go seeker sensitive. But I think there are ways of doing church where people who don't know Christ come in and they have the sense of, I don't know what's going on, but I actually feel quite comfortable here. Things like your facilities, make it as pleasant as we can for our guests. Worship tonight was absolutely beautiful. Just sensed God's presence in such an amazing way. And you know what I've discovered with people who don't know Christ, and some of you might be here tonight, and you are not a Christ follower, and you're so welcome here. But what I discovered about people who don't know Jesus is that when the presence of God is tangible anytime, they're actually drawn to that rather than pushed away. That's why at Pentecost, 3,000 got saved in one meeting. And I mean, some strange stuff happened at Pentecost. Peter had to get up and actually describe, guys, I know this looks strange. Obviously, some of the stuff that was happening, he was probably a little uncomfortable with, because he said, these guys are not drunk, as you suppose. So something, I don't know what was happening, but God's power came upon that group of people, and they were just exuberant in their love and passion for Christ. And some of their actions showed that. And he said, it's only 9 o'clock in the morning. This is the fulfillment of Joel chapter 2 that says, in the last days I will pour out my spirit on your sons and your daughters. This is the fulfillment. He gets this crowd, he manages to preach to them. And a whole bunch of them get saved in the midst of that activity. Non-Christians are attracted. They know how to because we all have spirits. If anyone is open to the gospel and they experience the presence of God, like was here in your worship, they sense that. And if they open, they respond to it. What about the welcoming of people? Gracie and I walked in tonight, and I think there were about 7 welcomers at the church. And I had to get something from the car, and I looked forward to coming back in again because the welcome was just amazing. It's like, geez, guys, this is like a welcome ceremony. Thank you so much. Social media, that's not something we're doing so great in at the moment. We're really looking into that. Facilities for young people. I think it's really important to serve young people in a city. Often parents get saved when their young people come in. Administration, shepherding, life groups, finances, etc. is just doing our best to make church pleasant and loving and admirable and inviting for people. The end of last year, one of our elders, Leon and Nicole, are a part of our team, and he said to me, he said, Guy, I think in White River, CU White River, I think we've plateaued a little bit. And I've learned to trust that man. He's not a man of many words, but when he does say stuff like that, I've really learned to listen. And I sought the Lord about that, and I realized in some ways we have plateaued. Not a bad plateau, it's actually a good plateau. You know this graph, hey? I know it's out there in business as well, but you're moving up the mountain, as it were, and you're moving forward, and then you reach this plateau. The plateau is only bad if you go down on the other side. Sometimes the plateau is really good to just catch your breath, to just reassess, to have a self-audit, or a church audit, or a business audit, whatever it might be, or a family audit. How are we doing? And as Leon told me, you're right, we've plateaued. And I felt the Lord in His favor and His love and His grace allowed us to plateau. And one of the things He wanted us to ask is, how are we building? How are we doing with our children's ministry? How are we doing with worship? And I jotted down a list of about 20 things that I chatted to the elders about. How are we doing in these areas? I think I overwhelmed them a little bit. My wife said to me afterwards, she said, Guy, I think that was a bit heavy. So I got hold of them the next day and said, hey guys, if it was a bit overwhelming, I'm sorry. But all of them said, we agree with that. We actually agree with it. It was like God saying, are you doing your best as a church to be the light of Christ in our community? And it's been very special how, as we've looked at all these things, I liken it to a garden with a whole bunch of rocks. You just take these rocks and you pull them up like this and you see if there's anything underneath there and you put it back again. You go to the next one and the next one. It's like every aspect of the life of the church. How are we doing? Is there anything that needs attention, Lord, before we put it back down again? And it's been such a visual picture for me because I know there's going to come a time where God's saying the next mountain is before us. It's just a visual picture, a really helpful picture for me. It's almost like as a church, we've got a new set of hiking boots here and a nice pair of thick socks and new dress wear and new walking sticks and chains and hammers and whatever they use to get up these steep mountains. And we haven't quite put them on yet, but I know there'll come a time where God will say, now. And I think, for me, it's another way of protecting the city, because we want to be the best that we can at what we do. God help us. I'm drawing this thing to a close soon. Number 7 is to shepherd the city well. For me, shepherding a city means providing spiritual wells for people, like life groups or home groups. I'm not sure what you call them here. I know you guys have got many, many, many. I think life groups are very spiritual, more spiritual than we realize. I don't mean the meetings necessarily are spiritual, although they are. But I think the concept of life groups is very clever. It's God's idea, isn't it? It's God's idea. In the book of Acts, when that amazing outpouring happened in Acts 2, 3,000 get saved. You've got to have a strategy from God to know how to shepherd 3,000 people when before there were none. In one day, 3,000 people, and God's plan was home groups. They met in the temple courts, which would be the equivalent of this, and they met from house to house. How do you sustain the big? Through the small. And the life groups do that. And I think these groups, these get-togethers, even a social braai, inviting people from the outside in, loving them. They might swear like troopers, they might blaspheme. We cringe inside and say, another blasphemy. But somehow God gives us grace to look beyond. Love loves beyond. And we do it again, and we do it again, and suddenly the walls start to crumble, and they come to Christ. And then finally, how do we protect our city? By serving well who God has put around us. You might be a retiree, and you say, God, my life's not overly active, although some retirees are more active than before they retire. It all depends on your world. But whatever we find ourselves doing, if we just take a little peek like this, who do I rub shoulders with on a regular basis? If you're working secularly, which most of you are, I would think, then it's those people that are around you. If you're in school or university or college, it doesn't matter where. There are people around you all the time. And most times, you see them daily. Isn't a good place to start to protect the city by just serving well who God puts around you? At home, the neighbor whose dog barks all the time. To still somehow have grace to love them and to serve them. And so, will you protect your city? Will you? That's a question. Will you? Come on, say it with me. Yes. Will you protect your city? Yes. It's our privilege to do it. And I challenge you to come on this journey with us. I know you are already. You're an extremely active church. But I just think God's saying, there's more. There's more we can do to love our city.